during the president's State of the Union address, I was able to track the impact of him calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. He got a spike out of that. I was able to track the impact of the Democrats refusing to stand for the Gold Star mother of kids that lost their children to illegal immigrants, and they're refusing to stand for the kid who had brain cancer. It was just stunning. And the drop, Democrats actually went under 10% approval sentiment whenever they refused to stand for that kid. I mean, their own party turned against them at that point. And I point that out to say it's funny because we were live tracking that during his speech. And then afterwards, I posted that the overall approval toward the speech was 60%. The next day, one poll came out. Now, when's the last time you saw only one poll done after a speech or joint session?
They didn't want to see it. They didn't want you to see it, did they?
Well, not only that, but you know what that poll had? The exact same number as what we had, 60%.
All right, guys, happy Friday to you. Big happenings in D.C. this weekend. I'll get to everything in a second. An amazing, absolutely, if you're a political junkie, sit down, relax, get yourself an adult beverage, because this is going to be one heck of a show coming your way. President left today for Rome. He's going to the Pope's funeral. He said that he might be meeting with Zelensky and others. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of meetings on what they call the sidelines of the Pope's funeral. By the way, it's going to be interesting. Apparently, the Pope's Mass is in Latin. They do get the little translator things, but that's going to be a tough one to sit through for the president. This weekend, the big White House Correspondents' Dinner, it is not what it used to be. This thing is going to fall flat. Yours truly, 8 o'clock Saturday night Eastern time, I will be on C-SPAN if you want to dork out. I'm going to help do some analysis, and then I'm heading out. Steve Bannon's having a party, and the independent creators over at Substack. So I'm going all the alternate stuff, which is so cool. I actually am excited that there's now an alternative set of events that aren't the old leftist elitist, folks here, that now the independent media is coming into his own. By the way, some other big announcements. On Monday, Stephen K. Bannon will be with us. And do we have a lot to talk to him about? So hit that notification button, spread the show over the weekend for me if you can. And then next week is the Trump 100th day. We will be at the White House. Some special programming headed your way later next week. We will be there taking the show on the road. Again, hit that notification button. Let people know if you can. Send the show to 5 friends. Today's going to be pretty epic, so a lot to get to. Before I get to my first guest, though, today, Chris Wilson. Guys, I'm telling you, he's a veteran pollster, named one of the best in the business. Got out to lead an effort at a company called Eyes Over. They are doing revolutionary stuff to get voter sentiment, to understand where issues and candidates are. You're going to be blown away when you see this. This is no longer polling. This is actual real-time data analytics. The White House is seeing it. Top candidates around the country are seeing it. This is the future, and you are about to get a front row seat to what's about to come your way going forward in politics. I am so excited about breaking this all down for you. And what Chris Wilson is going to show us on tariffs, on people, who's up, who's down. There's so much to get into. So just let's sit back and get ready to enjoy all this stuff. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you about one great guy, one great friend of mine, Leo Grillo. He's the founder of Delta Rescue. It all started when he found a Doberman on the side of the road. He rescued the dog, brought it back to health, named the dog Delta, which stands for dedication and everlasting love to animals. And what became one animal has now grown into the world's largest no-kill sanctuary. Not a shelter, a sanctuary. It is amazing. If you go to deltarescue.org, you will see what I'm talking about. It's dogs, cats, horses, you name it. And it is a place for them for life. Malnutrition, abused, neglected animals of all sorts can go there to live for the rest of their lives because of Leo Grillo. No USAID, no political pro subscriptions. It's all because of donations from people like me and you that are animal lovers that believe in Leo's mission. So please go to deltarescue.org. Check out what he's doing. Consider a personal contribution. I've made one personally myself, and I'd ask you to do the same. More importantly, if you see that estate planning kit at the top, see if you could make some old 401k or stock that you have lying around part of their enduring mission. You can probably get some kind of tax benefit by speaking to your tax professional. Anyway, I love the work that Leo's doing. Go to deltarescue.org to see how you can help. Thanks so much. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in the CEO of Eyes Over, Christopher Wilson. Chris, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah, happy to do it, Sean.
All right, look, you've spent a career as a very respected pollster. I mean, big candidates, big races. What you guys have done here, though, in my opinion, is revolutionary. Explain before we get into the data what the difference is between, say, a traditional poll and what you guys are doing now at Eyes Over.
Yeah, it's there's so much that goes into that, and I want to give a lot of credit to people who developed this because really I just was hired to come in and be the CEO and direct a ship that was already sailing pretty smoothly. But what we do in short is we track sentiment shifts in real time so the campaigns, companies, whoever can actually use that data and get ahead. And what I had found, there was a lot of challenges that I found with what I now call legacy polling. It was slow, it was difficult to accurately measure voters. And as you got closer to election, it became even more difficult because everybody in the world was calling people during dinner time. And Sean, when's the last time you actually answered a phone where it said unknown caller on it? And believe it or
Never,
not, yeah, we're
never.
not that different. Yeah, I get asked all this, if what do you put down if to who the people call if you get sick? I'm like, well, 911, because no one in my family is going to answer an unknown call. So what we do is we track the sentiment shift so that people can use it quickly. And our latest report, the one that we put out
Yeah,
yesterday.
but wait, when it
Yeah.
just Chris, before we get into it, because I'm so excited to get into the data. But when someone's listening to this and say, so traditional poll, you call
Mhm.
say 500 people, right? You get them on the phone, you ask them 25 minutes of questions, they give you your answer, whatever. How do you guys get data? Like when you say sediment shift, what does that
Okay.
mean, and how do
Yeah,
you get it?
that's a great question, and I sort of assume a little bit more knowledge and
I know,
understanding, so I
you're
should
right. Yeah,
go deeper on it. And so sentiment is really online conversation. What you find today is most people and far more people than will answer a survey are discussing their views online. Now, it could be their views specific to the border. It could be their views specific to a candidate. It could be their views just specific to the price of eggs. But no matter what, you are able to get a very deep understanding of where people stand on issues from ingesting conversations from X, from Facebook, from RSS feeds, from we started ingesting Blue Sky during the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, from Reddit, from YouTube comments. We now have the ability, when necessary, to listen to conversations. So that allows us to ingest TikTok and Instagram. And through RSS feeds, you can get things like Nextdoor. And I don't know if you've ever looked on Nextdoor, but those people get really political on there. And it's really funny. They tell them you lost your dog, and people are going to want to know whether your dog was Republican or Democrat before they help you return it. And the ability to pull all of that in and very quickly understand the impact of it. And Sean, this kind of crystallized for me whenever I was doing Senator Cruz's reelection last cycle, and we were doing the gold standard in polling. 400 interviews a night, rolling track, 1,200 interviews total. And Brad Parscale, who was running Eyes Over at the time and still is very involved with it, was sending me the numbers every morning for what Eyes Over had. And what I was consistently seeing is Eyes Over was about 3 to 4 days ahead of what we were getting from our traditional polling. But two things happened that really kind of was groundbreaking in my understanding and my recognition that this is the future. The first one was, you'll remember whenever Kamala Harris had the Beyonce rally in Houston, the one where they paid her $250,000 and she didn't sing.
right.
But we think back to the literature, Green and Gerber. What's the most impactful way to change numbers in an election? It's through a rally. It's why Donald Trump has been so successful. And Brad calls me the next morning and says, "Hey, you guys have a problem. Get the senator to the border." And I'm like, "Man, what are you talking about? We're fine. We just got to the field. We're up 4 points." He goes, "Trust me, you got a problem." And so we did. I mean, the senator went to the border, did some other things to get some earned media, and he calls me back a couple of days later and says, "Sure enough, he fixed it." And it was about 2 days after that that I actually have us down, and then about 3 or 4 days after that, that I have us going back up. So I was able to see in real time what through Brad sending me the numbers, Parscale sending me the numbers that he was getting through Eyes Over, that it was leading where polling was, and I was, even though we were doing a very expensive, very in-depth tracking program, was way behind that. But then on election day, we tracked through Sunday night, and I will tell you that it was nowhere near as accurate as the numbers that Brad sent me on Tuesday morning for the senator, where he had him at up 9 and we won by 9.5. And it was just, that was kind of game change for me. And I've really believed for a long time, Sean, that in the same way that polling moved from door to door to phones, and phones based on lists first. Remember, it started with Reader's Digest lists, Dewey beats Truman, and then it went to random digit dialing, and then went to registration-based sampling, and then proportional probability selection, utilizing analytics, and all these things that I was helping to implement. Because I've been doing this now for 30 years, and I knew at some point that this was going to go away. In fact, I was named Pollster of the Year after the Glenn Youngkin race in 2021, and I talked about this in whenever I was got the award, and said that we as a community have a responsibility to find what is next, because people are going to stop answering the phone and telling us what they believe in a way that allows us to get a result that we can rely on. And I think that happened in 24.
So let me ask you this before I get into the data in this latest deck, because it's so fascinating. I just want to surmise this and tell me if you think I'm onto this. Traditional polling, you call 400 or 500 people, you ask them to sit on the phone for 20, 30 minutes, and then you extrapolate those 500 people to say this is what 500,000 people think, right? And that kind of gives you a sense, and it takes you a day or two to synthesize the data. What you guys are doing is basically going out there in real time and saying, hey, Sean Spicer may not have gotten a phone call from a pollster, but on Facebook or on Twitter, he's talking smack about so-and-so, and we can ingest that and we can see where the conversation is today. Is that fair?
That's fair. And instead of 400 or 500, to give you an example, on the Cruz race in Texas, they were ingesting 107,000 pieces of data a night, just on average. And so you think about the comparison there, it's not even close in terms of what you're looking at. And so that is, you look at 100, right now, I just took a look at some political issues in Maine, and you think, okay, Maine, you're not going to have much political activity there in an off year. 20,000 a day that we are ingesting just in the state of Maine. And that's top of mind because I was talking about it yesterday, but it is, yeah, you're getting so much more data that you are able to, that the algorithm is taking and applying a ballot score or a favorability score or an approval score, and it's in real time, and it is radically more expansive than what you would get through traditional survey research.
Okay, so now let's get into your latest deck, because I find this unbelievable, because what I thought was so cool about this is that the media will go out there and sit on CNN or wherever and tell you, oh, Trump's underwater, Trump's doing this, Trump's doing that. But then I read your data and it's, okay, here's what actual people are saying in the country, online, okay. So let's start off, because this is, to me, the national shifts in your deck. This is where I want to start. And you said President Trump's sentiment on trade holds steady due to successful messaging surrounding economic nationalism in China, falling just 1% last week to 38. So economic nationalism, you guys say, is 80%. Voters across the Rust Belt are rallying behind the idea of bringing factories and jobs back home, even if they're skeptical about Trump's actual follow-through. Explain what that means. Like, so is the White House excited when they see something like this?
Yeah, and I will say, as you know, Parscale's got a very close relationship with the president and the people around him. And so, yeah, there's a lot of this data that they see on a regular basis. And I would say what it shows is, and I hear the same reports you do, I read the Wall Street Journal this morning, you've got all kinds of bedwetting about tariffs. But the fact is whenever the president, I think he does an excellent job of this, frames this, and so does Carolyn Levitt. I mean, she's so on message with it.
Oh, I want to ask you about her. There's some great stuff you have about her in there.
Yeah, it's when this is framed as part of an economic revival, not just a tool for retaliation, and reciprocity does have an impact too. But I sometimes hear, I think, senators, when they talk about this, they talk a little bit too much about the reciprocity side of things. But when it's economic revival, it does land well with voters, and that works, and it has a very different impact. And so I think emphasizing hope, revival, and solutions, and not just grievances, is the winning formula. Isn't just what we're against as Republicans. It's who Donald Trump is fighting for. And so frankly, that's why he won the primary going away, and why he's the president today, is because of that message.
So I've heard kind of three messages on the tariffs, right? Which is, one is onshoring, as you guys say, is very popular. Two, bringing stuff back, getting manufacturing here. Two is fairness. Hey, you charge us 50%, we'll charge you 50%. We go to zero. Okay. And then third is sort of raising money for the deficit, et cetera. If you're telling the White House, here's your key message to rally around, what is it?
That's the thing, is you got each one of those works with a different element of the electorate, but the key part of it is what we're able to measure from the sentiment of each one of those different messages. And that's, as you know, messaging no longer is just one single message that you can go take to everybody. I mean, there are different elements of the population that are radically, fundamentally different in terms of the way they're impacted. But the tariff messaging done right actually boosts Republican sentiment by 9%. And that is, for the overall impact of public polling says, oh, well, it's down and it's driving the president's numbers down. That's not what I'm seeing. Whenever he connects with that message that you just detailed, you see a very significant impact in the sentiment toward him and the job he is doing.
So, Chris, what I don't get, though, is that you hear a lot of pundits say the president's all over the map. It's deficit reduction, it's fairness on tariffs, and it's onshoring, bringing back manufacturing here. Are you saying that as long as you're saying all three of those things, that's good because different audiences, it'll appeal to different people, or is it they should focus on one or two?
No, I think the value is in understanding that there is no one message that works across the board. And
Okay.
so if you can get all three of those messages out, and the president's gotten a pretty large bully pulpit, then then he will be successful. Again, you can drive up the overall impact, the overall sentiment, the overall favorability.
All right, a lot of concern about what we're doing vis-a-vis China, and your guys' latest deck, 65%, when framed around national security, fentanyl, or IP, which is intellectual property theft, voters are more receptive to an aggressive trade action targeting China. So again, the media will tell you that voters are so concerned about how this is going to affect their bottom line. Is the takeaway there, as long as Trump explains the threat, we're good?
Yeah, it's the key is tying it to the tariffs and the economic messages. What the data shows is that voters respond positively when tariffs are framed as part of a broader strategy that rebuilds American industry, especially when it is positioned against threats like China's unfair trade practices. And I know that's a little bit contradictory to what I said earlier about the reciprocity side of things, but China is unique in this situation. And that's why I said there's no one message that works across the board. But it's not about tariffs as punishment. It's about protecting jobs, American jobs, from China. And that's the winning frame that Republicans need to push harder. It's Republicans win when we're fighting for American workers, whether specifically if it's against threats like China. But to not make it all roses here is when the message slips into grievance without a clear solution, just for the sake of anger, then we lose moderates who agree with us on the problem, and they don't really hear a hopeful path forward. And I think that's the clear thing. You asked about Levitt. I think she's done a great job on this. But the real threat, the threat from China is real.
Yes.
And if we sound like we're complaining instead of leading, voters tune out. If we sound like we're fighting and not whining, then it works. And that, again, is what I think Trump is just so good at whenever he gets in front of a camera.
So it's more we're fighting for you as opposed to we're complaining that they're screwing us.
Correct. Yeah, well said.
Okay. All right. Well, look, so this is the interesting thing that I also thought was interesting. Democrats' effort to unite around opposition to President Trump's deportation policies are backfiring. I'm going to go to Senator Van Hollen's, positive and negatives in a minute. But this is what I thought was fascinating. Senator Van Hollen is a clear example, you guys write. His sentiment score is stuck at 32. That's any politician who's got a 32, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And by the way, the thing that I love about the bottom of your chart here is you go, even Chuck Schumer outperforms Van Hollen at 34%. And I'm like, that's sort of like, wow, you really suck.
Yeah. I was trying to say that without saying it. So I appreciate the fact that you caught the subtlety there.
No, but so you read the CNN, New York Times, Van Hollen's a hero fighting for this beleaguered Maryland family man. And I have said all along that I thought this was going to backfire, and people kept saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. The polling doesn't suggest it. What you guys are saying, and I'm not saying this wasn't about me. This is more just saying that I don't think that going out and fighting for a gang member that's accused of domestic violence, being a member of MS-13 and coming into the country legally is somebody that most people are going to be sympathetic with.
Yeah. Well, you really summarized it all pretty well there, but it is Van Hollen's, the impact and the hit he took nationally is really pretty remarkable, because we actually track every single member of the Senate and every single governor. So we can do comparisons across the board. I can look at him compared to Chuck Schumer, or compared to, you name it, Marco Rubio. We got him since he was in the Senate, even though he's not Secretary of State. And we're able to track across the board how these senators compare to each other. And what we see, and on that chart, we list out a bunch of them, is Van Hollen is what he did really impacted his numbers nationally. Now, I did not take a deep look in his home state just because I think it's literally a bit of a unique situation because he tried to step out nationally in what he was doing. But yeah, his overall numbers and the the there's no other say, the animosity that ginned up
Yeah.
against him because of what he did is really palpable, and I think he has put himself fundamentally in a difficult situation to dig out from if he was trying to trying to catapult himself onto the national stage. Maybe he just wants to be a leader of the far left of the Democratic Party and that part that's out there trying to represent MS-13. But it seemed like a very curious strategy for someone who may want to
But
actually emerge out and build himself some kind of a reputation.
I mean, on this thing with the other members, you got him listed against Mark Wayne Mullen, Mazie Hirono from Hawaii, Marsha Blackburn, Tom Cotton, Mark Warner. I mean, it jumps out.
Yeah.
I thought it was a bad move, right? And I've been clear about that publicly, but I didn't think it was that bad of a move. This is stunning.
Yeah.
How damaging this is. And yet again, I go back to the media narrative, which you would think would help drive sentiment, and clearly not. Like, you pick up the Washington Post or the New York Times, you would think that Chris Van Hollen's up for the Nobel Peace Prize. Your data shows that the sentiment is not, that the American people are not with him.
You know what I have learned in being in this role, and I should be clear that I've been here since January 1 is when I came in as CEO, is that what the sentiment analysis, the online conversation is, one, it is so much more vast than what you get from just a simple poll, but it also is so much more immediate. So, like during the president's State of the Union address or a joint address to Congress, whatever, I was able to track the impact of him calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. He got a spike out of that. I was able to track the impact of the Democrats refusing to stand for the Gold Star mother of kids that lost their children to illegal immigrants, and they're refusing to stand for the kid who had brain cancer. It was just stunning. And the drop, Democrats actually went under 10% approval sentiment whenever they refused to stand for that kid. I mean, their own party turned against them at that point. And I point that out to say it's funny because we were live tracking that during his speech, and I promise this is applicable. And then afterwards, I posted that the overall approval toward the speech was 60%. The next day, one poll came out. Now, when's the last time you saw only one poll done after a speech for joint session?
They didn't want to see it. They didn't want you to see it, did they?
Well, not only that, but you know what that poll had? The exact same number as what we had, 60%. When's the last time you saw a survey come out and show that? I mean, how many times have we watched George Bush or going back even for his dad, Ronald Reagan even, or Donald Trump address Congress and a poll come out and show that it was favorable? And I think that's one of the values of what we're doing is because we are able to lead the conversation. That's why I started to put these numbers out weekly, is because I think what it's going to do is there's such a problem with legacy polling of herding, which means one poll comes out and then every other pollster, because they don't want to be an outlier or they don't want to be ignored or they don't want to be wrong with an election, they all kind of herd toward that same survey. Well, great that you guys can do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lead the herd because we're going to be 2 to 3 days ahead of you. And that is what I think I'm doing. Right. I'm trying to do, I should say, with Van Hollen. And other reaction to these situations is you used to have the CNN polls or the Marist or whomever come out and say, oh, well, Van Hollen, look at it, he did great. No, he didn't. And I can show it and I can prove it. And I can prove it with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of data points. And that is, I think, a game changer in terms of the way that we deliver our message, because I really think we've been we've been gaslighted by public polling, because they go out and they do these surveys and they show, oh, Trump's, you may have thought he did a great job, but his speech panned. Or, oh, Van Hollen went to go try and save an MS-13 member, and America loves it. No, they don't. And that's why we're releasing these numbers to try and change it. And we haven't even talked about it. And I know the New Jersey and Virginia races. I think those are
Oh,
other.
I'm going to get to. I want to get to that. I want to
Okay.
get to both of those. But let's stick with the people. Let's switch the aisles though, and go to the Republican side because I'm going to get to Caroline in a second. But
Mhm.
you talk about Treasury Secretary Howard Besant, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and they've been out there defending Trump's tariff policy, all that stuff in the media. Besant maintained a 42% sentiment according to your data, and then Lutnick trailed slightly at 38. Give me a perspective. Is that like positive, negative? Is that like, if I got a 48, that sounds like an F.
Yeah, no, it's not. Okay. Good question. And sentiment analysis is something that's taken me a little while to get used to. It's very different than favorability or approval. You really never see anybody get above 50% sentiment. We've had Trump there a few times. We had JD Vance there a couple times, but in general, it just does not happen. Usually, even a popular governor's sentiment is going to be in the upper 40s. And so, if you look at our charts, if you get someone up in the really from about 45 and above is like dark green. 45 to 40 is kind of yellowish. And then below 35 is where it gets to dark red. And I try and illustrate the overall attitudes by showing that because you're going to have a lot of people who have no sentiment, just talking about, oh, look what happened. And then a lot of people who you're going to have some base people who are going to be very favorable. And then you're going to have some that are just very negative. And so we
Right.
try and balance that against each other. And that's what the algorithm has been set to do. And so when I look at somebody in their 40s who's a national figure, because it's just like a national survey. You've got so many interviews that are coming from New York and California that you have to balance that against each other. I see that as in the positive manner, and particularly because I was been able to go back because the beauty of online comments is, as we often tell our kids, they live forever, and so we can go back and look at where Biden was or where his administration figures were. So that's what I'm doing. I'm comparing them against each other. So when I look at a senator like I deal with Ben Holland, I'm not comparing him against himself per se, or even just 0 to 100. I'm looking, okay, where is he compared to Chuck Schumer? Where is he compared to Mike Lee or Ted Cruz or Mitch McConnell, things like that. And so that's kind of the overall goal is for me to look at these comparisons to similar figures over time. And that's why I say, yeah, they're doing a good job in doing a good job in terms of defending the president.
Well, you talk about defending the president. So just to give context, right? 42 was where Besant was. You said that was really good.
Mhm.
Lutnick trails slightly at 38. But
Right.
then check this out. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, this is what you guys write, has proven adept at handling her high pressure role, maintaining a strong 45% sentiment over the past 30 days rather. I mean, you think Besant's good at 42. This is her at 45,
Right.
getting really close to that 50%. That's got to be amazing.
It is, particularly for somebody who is almost in a combative role, as nobody knows better than you, with the people she has to go out and talk in front of every day. And I think it is a real testament to the job she's doing and the fact that she's able to deliver the message in a way that is connecting with the American people. And that's what we're finding because, yeah, there's going to be a lot of criticism for you people in that role, right? And so you've got to be able to
I've heard.
you got to be able to fight back against that criticism and handle it in a way that puts you in a standing in which you are able to do your job, but also do it in a way that reflects you well and reflects your boss well. And I think that's what she's done. She's really the numbers represent that she's really done a very solid job of that.
So, in a traditional poll, you'd ask the question: the White House press secretary is Caroline Leavitt. Do you approve or disapprove of the job she's doing? And then you and I would have that conversation.
Right.
When you guys are scraping this right now, that means that someone who's out there in America right now saying, "Go Caroline, go," or "Caroline Leavitt's killing it," that gets picked up as a positive piece of information, right? Versus somebody who says, so and so is a jerk.
It does, but we also build a probability scale for each person. And let me tell you what that means is um, if somebody says Caroline's killing it, and they've never had a single positive thing to ever say about Donald Trump or Caroline Leavitt, that is going to be coded as sarcasm, and it would actually go into negative sentiment. So we
Oh,
actually get pretty deep in terms of the way that we look at that, and the algorithm is pretty sophisticated. I saw this. I actually was testing this out with Parscale during the election in Texas because someone tweeted out that, or posted on X, I should say, to use the modern language, that Biden and Harris were doing a great job on the border, and I'm sure all red will too. And so, you could read that and think, oh, well, that's positive. They think, and so I pulled it down, and Parscale sent me the data behind it to show that they were actually coded out as Trump Cruz voters. And so it's pretty sophisticated in the way that he goes about analyzing that.
Yeah, but that's got to be great for her. I mean, that just gave her some job security, 45% there.
Right.
But, you know, the other person that you put in this Trump administration watch that I thought was fascinating is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, the media has just gone after him. Like, I mean, that guy,
Yeah,
you know, doesn't close a door. I mean, he has just been pilloried all week long for every single thing. And you guys write this, his sentiment over the last 7 days remains satisfactory at 40%, suggesting a strong backing from the MAGA base is keeping him afloat. Is there a way of going in and looking at where that sentiment is coming from?
Yeah, well, it's like I said, that we could do it geographically, if that's what you mean. It is definitely from the MAGA base. I think he has built a populist, patriotic approach. He is, what am I? It's like, because I'm trying to think back to the specific comments about him, and it really dealt a lot with the way he has approached China, and then the way that he is seen as approaching border and sovereignty. So I think the Hegseth, he's just got a style about him
Right.
that is really connecting well, not just with the base, the MAGA base, but also in a way that is pretty it's pretty positive with voters in general. And so I have not seen an overall impact that the media is discussing specific to him that has torn him down. And I think from that standpoint, he is. I think it's probably why he seems to still be pretty popular with the president.
You know, it's interesting, Chris, that you're tracking these people because and here's just my thing that I've sort of been thinking about this for a while. Outside of, and you're a Politico pro, so this is probably not a fair question to you. But like, if you walk down the street there where you are in Oklahoma, or I am here in Virginia, and said to the average person, name me a single person in the Biden cabinet, how many people do you think could name more than one, if one?
Yeah, I don't know if you ever have do this, but I love going to lunch or dinner with friends that are non-political, or just maybe a little bit political adjacent, and they're like always, "Oh, this guy's definitely gonna be the next governor, and this guy everybody hates him." And then your waiter comes up or your waitress, and you say, "Hey, tell me, do you know who the attorney general of our state is, or you know who the lieutenant governor is, or who's the secretary of defense?" And the bottom line is nobody ever does. I
I know.
almost have never lost that, and so unique just because of his role on Fox News. In fact, I was getting on an airplane with him one time. It's been probably 4 or 5 years ago. No, it wasn't that long ago. It was probably just 2 or 3. And whenever we're going and checking in, it was Delta. They're all like, "Oh, we love you. You're great. We love watching you on TV." And it was I was just kind of watching it from afar, thinking this guy's become very popular very quickly. And I think that maintains itself. He is very good at dealing with the press, and so it's one of the reasons why I think the media goes after him. I mean, let's face it. How many people do you know in government who use Signal for every single thing they do? And so now that's become the thing that they want to go after him on. And it's just, I don't think it's going to resonate just because he does seem to connect with people pretty well.
Yeah, but it's not. See, the point that I was getting at though is broader, which is you probably couldn't. I mean, you asked the waiter or waitress at any bar or in an Uber, you asked the driver, name me someone who served in the Biden administration, and maybe they could name the press secretary, maybe not. In the Trump administration, Pete Hegseth, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Lee Zeldin, Pam Bondi, Linda McMahon. I mean, the list goes on, and it's almost like it's hard pressed not to, for the average person to think, I could probably name them all. And that's a big difference between the public persona of the Trump administration and the public persona of the Biden administration.
Great point. Yeah, it's a great point.
All right, you guys get into institutional trust, which I am fascinated by, just as somebody who sort of has looked at this over the years on Pew polling and whatever. And I want to go down because you start off with the military, 65% positive, 10% negative, 25% neutral. Do you think that's high or low?
Well, as you know, it's not to bury the lead here, but it was the highest. And I thought that was whenever we started to do this, and I did that in just to kind of push back on a Democrat deck that was put out last week. And where they talked about the failing trust of institutions. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't feel right to me. And so I think to me, it feels low until I compared it to everything else.
Right. Well, then, I mean, like the next thing on your deck here is the church, which I get is writ large. So it's not like the Catholic Church or the Protestant Church or the Baptist, but positive 35, negative 40. I mean, again, that I don't know where that's coming from, but I was actually shocked at how low the positive was on that.
I was too, but I'll tell you, Sean, if you haven't give a book a plug here, Megan Basham's Shepherds for Sale. I think there is a lot of dissatisfaction with the leadership of a lot of the mainstream denominations now that you're having focus into that. I consider myself a person of very deep faith, and I have probably been critical of different publications and different church leaders and different para church political organizations online that would be perceived as negative sentiment. And it is, again, I just can't. There's no way I could do as good of a job explaining why that is as she does in that book. And it really kind of details a takeover of a lot of the church organizations by well, she's done some victory laps after the defunding of USAID because she said it was happening last fall, and it was like, oh, that's nuts. That could never happen. And another conspiracy that proves true.
Yeah, we're doing the thing this weekend on conspiracy theories. If you sign up for the YouTube channel, you get it. But this one, we're talking about COVID. So for those of you who are out there that are interested, make sure you're signing up for the YouTube exclusives on the weekend. But
You got to fill that one in too. It's a pretty good one.
All right. So let's just keep going. The Supreme Court, positive 30, negative 50. That one didn't surprise me. I think the way the left has demonized the court now that they don't have their majority, has really, they have no problem. Chuck Schumer and Maxine Waters and all of these Democrats going after not just the court, but the justices. That didn't shock me.
Yeah, and and then you've got kind of both sides now because the rulings against President Trump last weekend, I think have created it to where they're being pinched in the middle. I mean, they've got people on the right who are angry at them, people to the left who are angry at them, and so it's not a great place to be if you're trying from a overall sentiment perspective.
And then obviously judges, it's even worse. Positive 25, negative 60, neutral 15. And to your point, I mean, it's become much more personal. Like the Democrats have made going after Gorsuch, Chuck Schumer saying, Gorsuch, we're coming after you, or Alito, or I mean, like Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh. Like we've made it very personal with these judges. But I still, I mean, 60% negative was a little crazy.
Well, again, I think there's been a lot of rulings in the press lately, specific to the executive orders that you have Democrats who go and protest in front of Supreme Court members' homes, and then on the right, we just kind of like talk online. We don't actually go do the protest in front of the homes because we're sane. But I think that's causing the pinching from judges, so everybody's mad.
The one thing that in your list here that I thought was low is that Congress has a 20% positive rating and a 70% negative, which I was like, oh, that's kind of low. Congress,
yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. Closer to the teens, maybe single digits. I don't know. Give them time.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I think the only thing holding them up right now, frankly, is that they're working with Donald Trump and they see them as a partner. As soon as I think if the Dems were to take over the House or whatever, I don't know that would be the case. But then Wall Street, you have
credit too to both Thune and Mike Johnson are both well liked. So you compare Thune to where Schumer is, or Mike Johnson to whoever the current perceived Democrat is. Yeah, I wouldn't say Hakeem Jeffries because he's not that well known. Really, it's more Garcia, the other guy who went down to El Salvador, but. Yeah, I think Republican members are doing a good job of building out their specific awareness and separating themselves from Congress in general, which I don't know that you could have said that about some of the past speakers.
Speaking of which, it's interesting because I sort of joked when these House members went down. I said, James Comer, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, as you know, had said, I don't want to fund any of these things. And I tweeted back at him and said, respectfully, fund it. Let's go. Send more of them there. And your analysis seems to prove that it's not good for them to go follow Van Hollen down there and be supporting gang members.
You know what it reminds me of, Sean? Whenever on the Youngkin campaign, Terry McAuliffe, on Monday night before the election, decided to go take a celebrity to go campaign with him. It wasn't Barack Obama. It certainly wasn't Joe Biden. It was Randy Weingartner. And we got on the phone inside of the Team Youngkin. Like, do we have to report this as an in-kind contribution? It's kind of the same thing. It's like
she's the head of the teachers union.
Exactly. It's like, should we actually just take up a fund and try and send all the Democrats down to meet with MS-13 members in El Salvador? I mean, maybe that's a good move for us.
So you mentioned Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin. Let's talk about the races. We'll do New Jersey. I mean, Virginia first, and then Virginia. I'll be honest with you. I've like, as a Republican that lives in Virginia, I'm excited that we have the trifecta: the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general. We've got two great candidates: Lieutenant Governor John Reed, and then Attorney General Jason Mayaris is running for re-election. But Winsome Sears, the current Lieutenant Governor, is running for governor. Mm-hmm. I tell me, based on this, I actually got very excited and felt positive after reading your analysis of the race here in Virginia.
Well, I think this is another example of the problems with legacy polling and herding. I think the first poll that came out had Spanberger up, and so every single poll that's been done since then has just herded toward that rather than doing a clean read. And if you think about it logically, Winsome Sears is the lieutenant governor. She's been elected statewide. She has campaigned with the very popular governor, Youngkin, and is mentioned in statewide press with him regularly. It only stands to make sense that she would be better known statewide, just logically, than a member of Congress who represents, 1/10, 1/11 of the state of Virginia. And yet one poll comes out and shows Spanberger up, and then every poll comes out and shows it up. And so my point in putting this out publicly is, just to be clear, I don't work for Sears, is that I think it is incorrect that all these polls have come out showing that Sears is down. And the one challenge that we have with the sentiment analysis, the way the algorithm works, is it projects out election day. Well, on election day, there's no undecideds. So I think it is a very easy escape mechanism for legacy pollsters to say, oh, well, we had 10% of decideds, and so it all came down to the undecideds on election day, and they all just went the other direction. And that's just that's not the way it works.
Meaning, so when you do this right now, you've got her up 53-47. Okay.
Right.
Does that mean you think that that's where the race is today, or that's where okay.
Whereas
a pollster would. Okay. And by the way, that's not if Winsome Sears is truly up 53-47 or 52-40, that's huge. That would be, that's fantastic. All right. I know my buddy Scott Pressler and a lot of people are very high on New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I got to be honest with you, Chris. I feel like Lucy with the football, New Jersey, everybody gets excited every 4 years. We're going to do it this time. This is different. Maybe it's the Senate race, not the gubernatorial race. Even the presidential race, we chased that a little. First of all, let's just start. Should we be hopeful that there's a possibility of picking up the gubernatorial race there in New Jersey? Because Virginia and New Jersey are the only two big, the
only two gubernatorial elections,
right?
This year. And so, and we went through this in 21, where we knew we had a good shot in Virginia, and then New Jersey kind of snuck up and surprised everybody. People didn't really put a lot of time of attention into that. And what's interesting to me, Sean, is I grew up in college Republicans. I was state chairman here in Oklahoma. Whenever I was chairman at the University of Oklahoma, and Bill Spadia was national chairman whenever I was state chairman. So I got to know Bill, and I actually went out to DC at Georgetown for a while and went over and volunteered at the headquarters. So I got to know him during that, and to see him leading the pack there, I think is pretty exciting. Just as somebody who, kind of grew up in politics with. And it is, at this point, I'm only looking at the Republican primary. That's what the numbers we put out. And until there's a nominee, it's really difficult for me to do a projection in terms of what a general election looks like. That is an advantage of legacy polling over the sentiment analysis and projections of the election. But I could hypothetically take Spadia and compare him to the potential Democrat nominee, but I just haven't gotten that place yet, just because I've been trying to watch the primary and see what's going on there. But to your question, is New Jersey on the table? Absolutely, it is. It is. There's no question that off years are more difficult for the party in power. Having said that, though, this is a year where Democrats are at an all-time historic low in terms of their approval rating, their sentiment with the American people. And so I think if you're looking at ways to, if you're looking at opportunities, these are the two big ones. And I think both of them are definitely, Republicans are in the game, and neither one of them should be written off.
So the only other thing I really want to ask you about, Chris, is this. When we talk about sentiment, and so if you think about a traditional campaign, so I announced that I'm running for office, I'm going to run for governor. And I go hire Chris Wilson as my pollster. I hire a media guy. I hire a fundraiser. I start raising some money, and they say, you know what? Like, we'll do a poll, but you're not well known. We're going to have to do some advertising. We'll go up on broadcast television. We'll do 1,000 points or 1,500 points or whatever it is in these media markets, then raise more money and do this. And you've seen this sort of advent of new independent media, online, social stuff. That's the kind of stuff you guys are looking at. Mm-hmm. If I come to you now, knowing what you know now on this whole sediment issue, where is my money and time and effort best spent trying to get ID, change sentiment, create a profile?
That's impossible to answer complete because it's going to be so different by every part of the country and every type of race. So, but let me just try and answer it as best I can. If you were completely unknown and you said, hey, here's $1,000 and you go spend it however you think you want because you're dictator of the spending on the campaign, I would put that into online targeting. Now, what do I mean by that? Because that is in today's way of communicating, that can be a lot of different things, but it advertising on YouTube. It is unskippable. It is, I think there's a lot of value in working with influencers and trying to get them to support a campaign. Sometimes that can be done. I mean, I can tell you on I Never Back Down, we had conference calls where we would try and talk to them and tell them, hey, here's what just the whole outreach. I think what Donald Trump did in terms of reaching out to podcasts, that was written like Alex Eisenstadt spent a lot of time in his book talking about that. And I think it was very valuable. And I think from an overall perspective, the online communication is at least as, if not more valuable today than traditional broadcast and cable TV. And now I know it's difficult to separate the two because, I mean, how do people watch you? A lot of people watch on the computer. Some people watch on their television, but they watch through different mediums. And so the targeting of the medium is more important than the actual going out. Okay, let's go buy $1,000 on broadcast TV in the Washington, D.C. market because I want to be governor of West Virginia. I think the days of advertising that way are hopefully behind us, and it is from a standpoint of spending money, it's not as useful. And let me just really quickly wrap up this comment with this. We actually did a very expensive test of this on Never Back Down, the DeSantis Super PAC. We spent almost $25 million. And Sasha Eisenberg, who's kind of the guru of writing about political data, came in and wrote about it. And what we found is that the second most effective way of communicating with voters to get them to change their opinion was texting a TV ad. Now, we didn't actually go as deep as testing it out in terms of what if we DM'd it to them, or what if we sent it to them over Twitter, or what if they just saw it on Twitter? And I wish we could have, but we just didn't have the time to do that. But I think you can take that second most effective way of text and TV ad and realize, okay, when you see something and it is direct to you, it is more impactful than you're walking through a room or, in the kitchen or going to the bathroom and you hear something in the background.
Awesome. Hey, Chris Wilson, CEO of Eyes Over. I can't tell you how cool this conversation was. Thanks for being with us and sharing us the data. Please come back.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on, Sean. Great to see you.
You bet. Guys, what a great show. Please remember to sign up at SeanSpicer.com. My next newsletter drops this weekend. C-SPAN tomorrow night at 8. We've got a special video on COVID dropping tomorrow and conspiracy theories. And then we'll be back here on Monday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back then. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.